Oh, come on, dude. Now you got them all dirty? Yeah, what do Grand Newts do about germs from the ground? Continuing right from where we left off last week, Shoma informed Hanto about Dente's fate at the hands of Glotta, and even though he wasn't there and wasn't nearly as traumatized as poor Sachika throughout this episode, Hanto, of course, had to be dramatic as all hell. I mean, not complaining, mind you, as everyone was in character, as Dente had become a significant part of all of their lives. Be it as a friend, a lifesaver, or just a plain old grunkle, he was a good man. I will say, I think the best performances in this scene were, of course, Lakia, as he tried to process how he had managed to let someone else die like his brother, and Hanto showing a good amount of concern for all of his friends as he wanted to empathize with all of them. A trait that Glotta really could have used to help prevent a lot of the misfortune in her life, but it was way too late for any of that. Ultimately, Glo's fatal flaw was believing that everything would just fall into place because she was in control of it all, when really, just like making desserts, people and life are a little more complicated than that. Thus, when Liesel gave her some of the toxins that they had been developing to help capture some spices, she jumped at the opportunity to regain some control in her life. Meanwhile, back with our heroes, they partook in the pudding a la modes that they were going to share with Dente, and yeah, okay, that's a little bit too complicated of a dessert. Like, I get the whipped cream and berries, but all the other fruits seem a little much to me, like the oranges and melon, as you're not going to be able to eat that with just a spoon. For me, I just go with this little ice cream bowl and some berries. Still, I get the idea, as they were all supposed to be fruits that Dente would have liked with his pudding, and now the characters were enjoying them in his place. It was a quiet, and yet very emotionally effective scene, and to add to it, they also looked into the memories of the Gochizo that they foreshadowed in the last episode, which had his final messages to them on it. He left it saying that he knew he would naturally pass away soon, though again, I think he also knew and was expecting more a physical Grim Reaper to come for him. Speaking of whom, Glotta made her move. Does this smell like chloroform to you? Shoma managed to track down Lakia, who wasn't in any mood to talk, and it's actually good to see Kohei Shoji show a little more range than just stoic all the damn time. He also displayed some good, subtle reactions when Shoma showed him his part of Dente's final farewell. He confirmed that he had managed to create an antidote to the toxin, which he hoped would never have to be used, which, yeah, about that. Still, it was a good moment, as it gave Lakia something to reflect on through Dente's last words of entrusting him to do the right thing. He of course didn't specify anything he should do, as he likely wanted Lakia to find his own path, but I think there was at least one path that Dente didn't want him to go down. And through a little bit of reflection, Lakia realized that one of the most important aspects of Shoma was his ability to put his hatred aside. It wasn't necessarily him just outright forgiving people, otherwise Jeep would still have a sister, but more that he understood that grudges need to be put aside for what was actually important.
There are bigger things happening here than me and you.
As I've said, the web crawler's influence never really left this company. As such, and after witnessing that people were suffering more than him, Lakia realized that he needed to prioritize things not as Komel's brother out for vengeance, but as a Kamen Rider who was supposed to save people by killing off his brother's killer.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, this is one of those hard catch finale instances where I get the idea is that the hero shouldn't just let hatred be their only driving factor, especially over justice. It's just that it's kind of funny when happenstance also lets them have their cake. Regardless, it was final battle time with Glotta, but Shoma, for some reason, aside from giving Lakia the spotlight, forgot to fill up his Gochupod, and when he tried to fill it up there, Glotta just killed off the little guys. I mean, she's not wrong. Needing to rescue most of the victims, the riders were forced to split up, leaving Shoma to fight his sister with his highly time-limited ice cream form, though it's not as though it really mattered, as Glotta was able to take him and Lakia, who had just arrived, out at the same time with her wrestling moves. Yeah, fun little fact, Glotta's actress Machi Chitose is a pro wrestling fan, hence why last week she put Lakia in an anaconda vice. And this is then carried over to her suit actress Suzuka Usami, who I'm guessing watched a few Asuka matches. And yet, Glotta's makeup still looks less ridiculous. But yeah, after they were taken out, Lakia still stood up and reaffirmed his new resolve to being a Kamen Rider rather than being obsessed with his vendettas. These words managed to move something in Shoma, and like the Cake Gochizo, he managed to produce a stronger power-up from a homemade treat. Symbolically sure, but I'm pretty sure it still came out of your little mutated tummy. But yeah, after one of the more unique henshin sequences with Lakia needing to set up a multi-layered tray, he achieved his a la mode, yeah, that's actually what it's called. I think I'll just call it the Kira form. And as for the design, that sure is a whole lot of silver. Yeah, unfortunately, of the 4 final forms of this season, this was probably my least favorite, if only because of a severe lack of different colors. Like, I get it's supposed to represent the silver-plated a la modes they ate earlier, but why not do stuff like spraying out the pudding colors on his right shoulder in order to make it not look so plain? Now, I do think the helmet design looks great with sharp edges to represent the sliced fruits, but at the same time, why did they use more than just apples and oranges, like the kiwi and melons? No, wait, I forgot, this toy we're talking about, they don't like the color green. By no means do I think this is a bad design, but still, as a final form involving a lot of silver and fruits, yeah, I've seen better. That said, this debut fight more than made up for all of my complaints and more. First of all, they played a really good insert song called Shake It Up by the same guys who do the show's opening, that also perfectly told the story of Lakia's journey of overcoming Komel's death and becoming a proper Kamen Rider. Second, we got arguably one of the best new form debut fights of the series, with him and Glotta just going at it. Easily, the most impressive sequence of maybe this whole series was having the actor hanging out one leg on a broken guardrail. I'm not sure if they're using any sorts of special effects, I don't think so, but either way, it looks insane and led to this amazing bit of him just casually throwing Gasai at Glotta before getting comfy.
That was awesome!
And in the end, he and Shoma defeated her by double, or rather quadruple teaming her with the whip soldiers. From there, Lakia finished her off with one of the best rider kicks in the show, ignoring the fact that he did in a pair of loafers. Yeah, I get that those are supposed to represent like the caramel on the pudding, but come on, those are freaking loafers. Later, Lakia managed to also say his final farewells to Dente by eating his pudding whilst his new Gochizo watched. That had to be awkward. And the episode ended with Glotta just barely alive, but was able to last just long enough to reunite with...
What a surprise!
This is both a really good debut for Lakia's final form, as well as a conclusion to his arc. It is great to see him finally fully embrace the duties of a rider and overcome his past traumas, leading to a really impressive debut fight. Sure, I was a big fan of the suit design, but it's the rider who makes the suit, not the other way around. Of the 3 main riders of the show, I would say that Lakia had probably the most dynamic story arc, going from an outright villain driven by rather senseless and illogical vengeance to a proper rider and hero. The fact that this episode and his arc were culminated by both one of the kindest old guys ever, as well as someone he originally tried to off as a part of his vengeance, really highlighted how far he had come. In contrast, it was really satisfying to see Glotta's fall from a confident Dami-Mami who really thought that she had everything under control by simply dominating everyone around her, only to realize that all she really did was isolate herself, which allowed the house of cards that was the Stomach family to inevitably fall apart. And yet, in spite of all the evidence to the contrary, she tried to double down by regaining power even though she knew there was no reward of a happy family at the finish line for her. This resulted in her and Lakia having an amazingly choreographed and stunted final bout, which Shoma took part in, which was justified as it highlighted how truly lonely Glotta was. Really, the only member of her family who still loved her was Longo, who of course was still alive, and I am interested in seeing what his future plans are now that we at least got a satisfying conclusion for his sister. Until then, though, this is overall a great Locky episode to effectively mark the end of his arc. I'm sure Komel and Dente can now pass on happily, knowing that Lakia has moved on and can enjoy his pudding. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see other treats like this, well, I think the other videos on our channel kind of count. We got something new coming out almost every day, including some subjects that we are experimenting with. Look forward to whatever comes next. Until then, though, for now, my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I think I'm going to have another one of these. Yeah, the recipe made 4 of them, so you better believe I'm not going to waste any of these eggs.